Hello, my friends. Come in, come in, sit down, take a breath. My name is Miss Carol. I am a former career teacher, now here with you, sharing everyday lessons of self acceptance, and self love so that we can cultivate more meaningful relationships. One of the most crucial relationships that we can have is that relationship that we have with whatever romantic partner we're with. But obviously, there is something going on in the culture between men and women, if that's whom you choose to date, because there is such a dismissiveness that is happening. And rather than be someone who is complaining and pointing the finger, it is imperative that we all take individual and collective inner reflections on how we are responsible for distributing that energy out into the world. Because it's easy to point the finger at someone or at something. It's much, much more challenging to take accountability and take responsibility for what we may be doing. And someone who has two older brothers and a father and uncles, this is not just subject to romantic relations. This is about male and female dynamics in general. And I had a very interesting interaction with an older gentleman a couple weeks ago. And, I said hello to him because I kind of caught his conversation that he was having with a friend. And I just introduced myself. I told him what work I was doing. And it was just, but me being me and the conversations that I usually have tend to turn deep. He quickly asked me, why women were butt naked at the gym, and I just kind of laughed because, unbeknownst to him, this is probably the third or fourth time that a random man has said this to me, has asked me, because I endeavor to speak to strangers when I'm out, and typically they're older because they're much more receptive to conversation. So I made a TikTok about it, and the amount of feedback that I got, it blew my mind. I was like, wow, this is a real thing that people are going through. People feel really strongly, whatever their position is. And, whenever something like that is happening, my first inclination is to be curious about it and to wonder, okay, what is the deeper thing that's happening? What is the deeper thing that is attempting to be communicated here? So I wanted to kind of come up with a few questions that a man could ask a woman could ask a man, you could ask anyone basically that you're interested in, into delving deeper into the person that they are, because everybody is an individual. Nobody wants to feel like you've had the same script of questions for the last 10 dates. But before I read these questions, I do want to say that if you are not practicing your deepening of your consciousness, you are emoting in a healthy way, and the other person they're going to be able to see off the rip that you are full of shit, and they're going to be able to walk away from you at this point. And that's another thing that I am grappling with. People are just so afraid of rejection now, and it's mind-boggling to me. But here are some questions that you can ask someone if you are intrigued about them. So the first question is, what's something you used to believe that you no longer do? The second one, when do you feel you're most alive? If nothing was holding you back, what would you do tomorrow? What kind of love do you think you deserve? What's something you wish more people understood about you? So you can tell that these are not just any old kind of questions. These are questions aimed at attempting to really understand someone. And just one of these questions is enough to spark a conversation that could last hours, really. It's just about how vulnerable you want to be, because that's part of it. I feel like men and women don't trust each other to be vulnerable. And it's unfortunate because there are so many wonderful people out there that are single, either by choice or not. And it just feels like we're just kind of passing each other, and really getting and stepping on each other's toes so often for these little things. Um, one thing that I always think about is I think about it from a historical lens. And I think about it from the lens of men needing to get to a certain political and socioeconomic power. So, in essence, they had to subjugate women because women naturally orient ourselves from compassion, from forgiveness, from honesty, from integrity. That's how we, in general, that's how we naturally orient ourselves. But if you have someone who is attempting to control land, people, etc., you can't have those two things can't mix. You really do have to you really do have to oppress that in order to uh, get that ultimate goal. And we see the remnants of that even today. And it really makes me think, these men who are in power and how they've had a certain level of financial prosperity. Where is the emotional intelligence in terms of priority? How has that been so left to the back to where now it feels like at sometimes we really just cannot relate to one another. We genuinely cannot relate to one another because women have been cultivating, in general, women have been cultivating a freer consciousness in general. Like I said, women are naturally more nurturing, more compassionate, and men are orientating themselves in a behavioral manner, more action oriented. And when you have those kind of things coupled together, there's bound to be some tension. There's bound to be some miscommunication. But again, I'm not about finger pointing. I'm not about you did this and you're to blame for that. And that just gives context. That is just the context. And there was another really interesting quote that I heard a few days ago from Abraham Hicks about pleasing. We are much more adept at pleasing others than we are at pleasing ourselves. And this was very interesting to me. Sometimes it is fun pleasing them, whoever them is. It feels good. But if you reach this place when you're reaching to please them and they are out of sync with source, the universe, consciousness, then pleasing them cannot possibly please you. Meaning, if you are attempting to ground yourself or please someone who is out of the natural order, you are going to be like that snake eating its own tail. You're just going to be going around and around and around. And I really do hope that we get to a place where we can start to have honest and vulnerable conversations, because men need women and women need men, regardless of the romantic part of it. And we are here for our mutual benefit. And if we are not careful, we are going to really get into a dangerous situation where things can always get worse before they get better. And it is my hope that before that happens, we will see the value and the worth in one another, not because of anything that we do, just because of who we are. And we can come together and attempt to mend these bridges that have been so disturbed and destructed for so many years. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I will leave my Stan Store in the description box. And please check out this next video. I think it will be very helpful for you. Bye, my friends.